And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on the Staples Network, the show that provides research and statistics all about the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. I'm Taylor Phillips, with Frank Vajcner. Ed Smith is on a health assignment right now. Due to undisclosed reasons. But follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Follow Frank Vajcner on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Frank_Vajcner. And on Ed Smith's behalf, too, you can follow him on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at EdSmith313. Follow the show. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. Also like its Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Check out its website, the MichiganSportsTruthPodcast.com, and scour the Staples Network's YouTube channel, the Staples Network, and subscribe to it. Also like the Staples Network on Facebook, which is on Facebook Live right now, and follow it on Twitter at Staples Network and on Instagram at the Staples Network. Plus, listen to it on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spotify, CastBox, Deezer, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Blog Talk Radio. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any of the mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, reveals, and analyzes honest, actual, and hidden truth facts and statistics about them, because the truth is always out there. And that's all that matters on this show. So we got a lot of topics to talk about, including our top story on Holland berating Johan Franzen, Michigan and Ohio State, Michigan State and Maryland, college basketball, Lions, Red Wings, and Pistons. But first off, we want to break some terrible news. Longtime broadcaster and 10-year CMU football and men's basketball play-by-play announcer Don Shido just passed away tonight after being killed in a car crash, according to the Morning Sun. Wasn't exactly my idol, but he was a decent play-by-play guy. But I know he said some words that just said some words about in terms of football terminology, such as kick, as in punt. He didn't even say punt, but kick instead. But anyway. He was. Other than that, he was a good play-by-play announcer. Not great, but still good. Very tragic news to pass along to you guys. Don Shido, prayers and condolences to his family and to his audience as well, and to the entire CMU community and organization and CMU athletics. My Chippewas. I'm a CMU alum, so I thought I'd pass that along to my audience, especially the Chippewas in our state. Fire up Chips.
They're playing for the MAC championship on Saturday.
Yes, I want to mention that too. Saturday at noon on ESPN2 against the Miami, Ohio Redhawks. Head coach Jim McElwain turned a 1-11 John Bonamigo team to an 8-4 team, back to an 8-4 team from 2 years ago, and now they're the MAC West champions.
Job well done by Jim McElwain. Hey, he deservedly won MAC Coach of the Year, so let's all give him a tip of the cap for the job he's done and see how they do against Miami of Ohio, who kind of surprisingly won the MAC East. So,
yeah, he's already been named the MAC Coach of the Year, win or lose in that MAC title game at Ford Field in Detroit, downtown Detroit.
It's nice to go from you win one game the previous year, then you turn around and win 8 games, win your division. So hats off to Coach McElwain and company up in Mount Pleasant.
Yep, indeed. Tickets are still available to Ford Field, especially to the Chippewa Nation out there. Fire up Chips. So that being said, speaking of college football, Michigan and Ohio State, the Buckeyes destroy the Wolverines again, 56-27. Justin Fields at quarterback, 327 passing yards and 4 touchdowns before getting injured. J.K. Dobbins, 211 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns. Shea Patterson for Michigan, 285 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, plus 1 fumble lost in the OSU red zone, which pretty much cost the Wolverines a scoring opportunity and maybe the game, because it changed the momentum right there. Kind of like Ninja Warrior, where you make one mistake, you stumble, and it causes you to fall into the muddy waters below at Mount Midoriyama. Yeah, but then, so OSU, Ohio State, 8 straight wins against Michigan. And after the game, Jim Harbaugh it said, I'll take your questions and not your insults. And then the sources tell the media that Harbaugh is staying put. And Harbaugh, got to keep in mind, he's got 3 years left in his expensive 8-year contract worth $9 million a year, $72 million total. So that we've already scoured Ed Smith's notes on his behalf, and we want to share them to you. It wasn't 62 points, but it sure as heck felt worse than last year. The script was familiar, dotted I and all. Even the unmistakable feeling of sulking anger and disappointment that now has its own sense of becoming a time-honored tradition in itself. Despite a fiery first quarter and an attempted comeback late in the fourth, the inevitable came to fruition in just as painful of a matter as all the other 16 times the Buckeyes have taken, most of them in dominant fashion against the Wolverines. At the crux of this defense, or lack thereof, that's shown against OSU's offense, giving up at least 30 or more points in all 5 games during Harbaugh's tenure alone, making mincemeat of whatever scheme and plans Don Brown ever conceived by simply having superior athletes and a far abundance of them. And Don Brown should be fired, by the way, and we'll discuss him a little bit. Despite having top 10 and top 5 finishes in defensive yards allowed and total defensive efficiency, the Wolverines yielded nearly 600 total yards of offense to the Buckeyes, including 4 touchdowns from Justin Fields through the air and 4 on the ground from J.K. Dobbins, leading to the 56-27 dismantling of the maize and blue by the scarlet and gray, or silver, if you prefer, but it's still scarlet and gray traditionally. Of course, it wasn't completely the defense to blame, but it mostly was. Multiple miscues from Michigan played a huge role in sealing their defeat. There was a fumble by Shea Patterson, as I mentioned before, multiple passes that were dropped, including an interception and a touchdown that would have helped change momentum, as well as foolish penalties, including an offsides on a 4th and 4. Ed mentioned last week that Michigan needed to make each and every one of their offensive possessions count, and they did not do that, which put them behind the 8 ball just as much as OSU's unrelenting offensive attack did. As for what happens next, that is much more murky and unknown at this time than it was last year. For then, it was a simple problem that required a simple solution: fix the offense. And with the hire of Josh Gaddis, that took time to tinker and mesh before coming into form. That one problem looks to be on the way to a solution. As for now, it becomes, what do you do to catch up with the Buckeyes? And what are they prepared to do as well? It might include having to part ways with Don Brown. A heavy revamp. Yeah, there you go. Like I mentioned before, Don Brown should be fired. A heavy revamp on recruiting and developing talent on the defensive side of the ball that has taken a considerable decline since the star-studded 2016 version, and the ever-evolving constant chatter on whether or not Jim Harbaugh deserves to remain even as head coach. Because while beating up Michigan State and Notre Dame is nice, and 9 to 10 win seasons are cute, the bottom line comes down to that last game in November and getting to Indianapolis in December. Through 5 years, Jim Harbaugh has a massive goose egg in both those categories. So while he may feel that questions about whether or not his players weren't prepared or coach properly leading up to and during this game to be insulting, the fact of the matter is there is a gap. It does exist. And in order to reduce or even reverse this massive gap, this question now becomes not just for Jim Harbaugh, but the entire University of Michigan football program. Ed Smith was going to write, what are the Wolverines prepared to do? But it doesn't seem to be on there. But anyway, that's another topic for another time, probably sometime later in the future or something like that. So we probably won't have to worry about that. So Ed's off the hook there. So Michigan is bowl bound 10-2. I get that, but still not good enough. My question is just for kicks. Do they still get to the BCS to a BCS bowl game? Frank?
Well, Taylor, it's actually a New Year's Six now, since they obviously aren't going to get to the college football playoff. So no. A New Year's Six bowl, I don't think they're going to get to. From what I've heard, and from what a parent of a member of U of M's marching band happened to say that I know pretty well, sounds like it's going to be the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, or I want to say the Outback Bowl is what I heard as well. So you're probably having to settle for that. And again, who it could be against, I don't know. There's some people saying they could face Alabama. Only time will tell. We'll know for sure on Sunday. But a couple of things I would like to say. I mean, again, I have to give a lot of props for all these notes that he prepared. But it was actually Jordan Strack from WTOL 11 in Toledo, who I know personally, who asked Harbaugh about the gap, that whether it was coaching, playing talent, what have you, and he's the one that said, and Harbaugh said, I'll answer your questions, not your insults. Let me ask any Michigan fans this. The question that Strack asked, how is that an insult? He basically said, he followed up and said, it's not an insult. You've given up 118 points in the last 2 years combined and gotten beaten. Let's see, you got beat by 29 in this most recent game, and you got beat 62-39 last year in Columbus. There's a gap there. And denying you, saying that it's an insult is basically denying that it's there. Now, as for ways to fix that, I mean, it's going to have to start with telling Don Brown adios. Because, look, he said, I didn't mention too, Don Brown's defenses put up their performances against garbage teams, against teams that have bad offenses, like Michigan State this year, or against Maryland, or against Rutgers, or Iowa, what have you. But when it comes time when the rubber meets the road and the chips are down, and you got to go up against somebody who's got a good offense, case in point, Wisconsin, you got jackhammered 38-14, and then you go down and then you play the Buckeyes and they put up a 50-burger on you. Something's going to have to happen. Heads are going to have to roll. As for who Harbaugh brings in as his defensive coordinator, I'm really not sure at this point. I haven't heard any names out there. I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to pluck Dave Aranda from LSU, who's making around $2.5 million. And I don't think you're going to pull anybody away from Alabama because, quite frankly, their defense was not that good this year. And you're definitely not going to get somebody from Ohio State staff or anybody from a top-tier program. You're going to have to find somebody who can actually coach up defenses pretty well. And really the only name I know that's not there that's currently looking for a job is Todd Orlando from Texas. And again, Texas defense wasn't that good. So right now, the heat's really turned up on Harbaugh. He's got to find new defensive coaches. I mean, as for an offense isn't the problem. I mean, Josh Gatz's offense has started to come along. There's times it's sputtered, but it's gotten going. But defensively, something's got to change, or else the heat's going to be even turned up more. And I'm not saying that Harbaugh's job is in jeopardy, because I don't believe it is, even though I think it should be, because at Michigan, you should not be going 0-5 against your chief rival. And by not doing anything, you're basically just waving a white flag and admitting that, well, there's a gap there. We just can't beat them. You're Michigan, for God's sakes. You have one of the best brands in college football. You have tradition.
Historically.
With Bo and Woody. And now you're saying that your expectations are now that of Iowa? Give me a break. You should be, I'm not saying you got to go out and beat Ohio State every year, but at least maybe beating them once every 4 or 5 years. That shouldn't be too hard to do. And you shouldn't be giving up a 50 burger to them on a consistent basis. So there's a lot. Michigan coaches and players are going to have to take a long look in the mirror and realize what we're doing is not working, and somebody's going to have to shake the tree. The thing is, who's going to make Harbaugh do it? Is Ward Manuel going to stand up to him and say, look, Jim, make changes or get out? Because Harbaugh's the third highest paid coach, and he just got a pay raise too.
Not only are they keeping him, but that too. Gosh.
And even though there are rumors that he'll go back to the NFL, like they say, oh, he's got the best odds to go coach the Carolina Panthers after they fired Ron Rivera. I'm here to say that though anything about him going to the NFL is a nothing burger. There is no substance to it, because at Michigan, Harbaugh's essentially his own boss.
Yep. He is.
I mean,
if they keep Don Brown too, I'm going to say screw this team.
Well,
because I was praying for them to win for somebody. Not going to mention it.
Oh, but, yeah, I know you mentioned it to me as well. But the truth is, there's a gap there, and quite frankly, it's grown wider since Harbaugh's taken over. Now, what are you going to do to fix it? I mean, firing defensive coaches is going to be one thing to do, but I think recruiting thing is going to have to change as well, because Ohio State is constantly getting 4- and 5-star guys, and I might add, developing them into first-round draft picks. Because I'll tell you right now, Chase Young, Jeffrey Okudah on Ohio State's defense are going to be first-round picks. And depending on how well the rest of this season goes, you could very well see J.K. Dobbins sneak into the first round. You might even see possibly K.J. Hill, a wide receiver, get in there. And maybe next year's draft, Justin Fields could be one of the top quarterbacks, and he might get first rounder. Ohio State's got a system. You got to really step it up. If you want to be considered a playoff team, you want to win the Big Ten, you want to go to Indy, you want to be considered one of the leaders at best, like your fight song says, then you better start manning up and stop making all these excuses that, oh, Ohio State cheats and does this, that, and the other.
They didn't cheat this year.
Exactly. They always point to Chase Young taking a loan, but Chase Young paid that money back, and that's another story. It's put up or shut up time. No more excuses. And truthfully, Harbaugh's seat should be a raging inferno.
Yeah, but but Ward Manuel and his flaming trash posse, always loyal to Harbaugh. This will never change. You saw the video, the latest 5 Points video, 5 Points Vids' latest video on the 10 worst failures of all time. 10-year the greatest 10-year failures in sports. And Jim Harbaugh, Michigan, Ohio State, proved to be number one. I don't even know if you saw it or not, but
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah. 5 Points Vids analyzed it and killed it. You guys should see, to our audience out there, subscribe to 5 Points Vids and check out his latest video, please. I beg you all to see that. Unless some of the audience wants to coddle Harbaugh too, you know.
Well, I do know that there are Michigan fans, and a lot of them I know that'll play but he wins 9 to 10 games a year. Just like Ed said in his note. Beating up on Michigan State, Notre Dame is nice. 9 to 10 wins a year is cute. That doesn't mean that you can just lower the bar when the goal is ultimately to win the Big Ten. And you haven't even sniffed Indianapolis yet.
Right. And in other words, to sum it all up, Michigan fans try to sound too cute. Not sorry, Michigan fans, not good enough. Real sorry, but not good enough. But you know what? The regular season's over. It's already 21 change past into this episode. We're probably going to skim through Ed's notes. Michigan State versus Maryland. Michigan State was in a low-scoring affair against those Maryland Terrapins. Maryland was 3-8 going into it, and Michigan State's offense at home couldn't get much going. They got the 19-16 win, but not only did it seem like a defensive game on the scoreboard, but on the field, of course, their offense. I know they scored 27 points against Rutgers, which is not great, but still good. But scoring just 19 against Maryland is awful.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, Frank, what did you learn from Ed's notes on Michigan State versus Maryland, if you looked them up?
Well, I've actually got them in front of me right now, and the first thing I want to jump to is after they beat that dumpster fire of a Maryland team, Antonio passed out hats that said program win. And when I saw that, there were a lot of things that I had to say, but I will refrain from repeating them here for certain reasons. Unfortunately, but the sad thing is, it's a joke. You said it's a program win just to get to a bowl game. And you went from winning Big Ten championships, going to Pasadena, and even getting the playoffs, which I know a lot of my Michigan brethren would probably do a lot of crazy things for. And now you basically have just burned it down, and it's now an also-ran. And look, and I know a lot of my Spartan brethren will say, we've only missed out a bowl in 1 year. That's cute. I know it's not like Bobby Williams and John L. Smith, where there was only one bowl game those guys got to. But the way it's going now, it's going 6-6 after you've experienced trips to Indianapolis and to Pasadena and to the college football playoff. Settling for 6, 7, 8 wins a year, that's not going to fly anymore. Of course. And I'll even quote Ed. It says, for D'Antonio to steer any control, fire your church buddies and put the effort and money where your mouth is in regards to your offensive staff or step aside and let somebody else come in. Because this program is heading back to the days of John L. and Bobby. And quite frankly, I've seen enough. Especially after they made the playoff when there was clearly offensive issues and they got shut out by Alabama. D'Antonio says, nope, not making any changes. Let me tell you something. When Ohio State last was in the college football playoff was 2016, and they got shut out 31-0 by Clemson. Urban Meyer leaned house on the defensive side of the ball, and he also brought in a new offensive assistant. Nick Saban didn't like the way Alabama beat Washington only 24-7. He told Lane Kiffin, you're not welcome anymore. Get out. And Lane Kiffin is now coaching at Florida Atlantic, which is a joke of a program in itself. See,
Yeah, I know.
You want to claim to be a big boy and one of the elite, you've got to be able to make changes when you get housed and take a look at the mirror and say, look, we learned a hard lesson. We got to be better. And unfortunately, I've got to get rid of guys who they may have done good to me and they may have done everything I asked of them. The bottom line is college football is a business. This isn't church league softball, where you got to bat everybody and you can't cut people from your team or anything like that. You've got to make the big, tough decisions. D'Antonio is going to have to do that. And quite frankly, I don't have any faith that he is going to at all. And I don't mean just shuffling around his offensive staff and putting different guys in different places. That doesn't cut it. You got to tell guys, sorry, you're not doing as good enough a job anymore. See ya. Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate all you've done for me, but it's time to move on. Thank you. I'll get out of my office.
Yeah. And hopefully that happens. I don't even know if it is or not, to tell you the truth. We'll have to see what the future holds. So moving to college basketball, Michigan upset North Carolina and Gonzaga, and then they played Louisville. They got overworked. Louisville was number 1. Michigan was ranked 4th. I think Michigan is still a really good team with Juwan Howard as head coach, and John Teskey, of course, leading the way. Louisville has pretty good defense. Wolverines offensively just had a bad night, 26% shooting, very rough. I think the Wolverines offense is better than that. I think the Wolverines can rebound from that ugly loss to Louisville. The Cardinals still very good. Do they still have Rick Pitino as head coach, Frank?
No,
I
Rick
think so.
Rick
But
Pitino actually got fired after the whole scandal with Adidas that happened a couple of years ago. Chris Mack is now the head coach. He's in his 2nd season there.
I'll tell you what, though. Kind of seems to me like Pitino's their head coach, but Chris Mack is instead. But still, the Louisville Cardinals have just quite an elite men's basketball program. That's why they made it so far to the Final Four so many times. They beat Michigan in 2013, the national championship game.
Although that game was actually vacated because I think that was around when Pitino was discovered for hiring prostitutes for his players.
Oh,
yeah,
there's some dirty truth.
Yeah, I mean we could dive into that, but that's been something that happened a while ago. So, look, everyone just look that up and
hey, cold cases are necessary.
Yeah.
The past truth can still be broken down on our podcast. So yeah, we can do that too.
Yeah, but I mean, it was something that happened years ago, and I actually found out about. I kind of found out about it because my my pastor's son-in-law, he actually went to the same military academy as a couple of Louisville players, and he actually found out that what Patino did and for those guys, and he was just in real disbelief that it happened. This was like years ago.
Yeah.
But
So,
that was why Louisville ended up having. I'm pretty sure that was the reason why Louisville had to vacate their national title.
oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So they were stripped of it.
Yes, it was vacated, and so there's technically no national champion for 2013. I know Michigan was the runner-up, and that was actually pretty. I remember watching that game, and I know a lot of Michigan fans are going to say that Trey Burke had a clean block on Peyton Siva, but it was called a foul. But let's be real, that's not the reason why he lost the game. Was it a horrible call? Yes, but
yeah,
he just didn't make enough shots to win the game. That happens, and
yeah.
Right.
Michigan still had a chance after that first half to put Louisville away, and they just flat out choked, which I'm still angry about after all those few years.
Yeah. But as for last night's game, I've got totals in front of me. I mean, John Teskey's really emerged as a nice player. He's really 18 points for him, but that was really the only player in double figures. Isaiah Livers, only 3 points on 1 of 9 shooting. Eli Brooks, 2 points, 0 for 6. And Xavier Simpson, 9 points on 4 of 11 shooting, 0 for 2 from downtown. And Franz Wagner, Mo Wagner's little brother, 5 points, 2 for 6 shooting, and not a lot from the bench. As Brandon Johns, David DeJulius, and Castleton, gentlemen, and only got 2 points apiece. But Michigan as a team, 15 for 58 from the floor. That's just a shade under 26%. You're not going to win games if you're shooting that bad. 3 for 19 from the long line as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Louisville's a team you cannot have a bad shooting night against. Because this Chris Mack is actually a pretty good defensive coach, and that's a team you really have to get your shots to beat as well. And plus, it also doesn't help that they got out-rebounded 48-41. And I think you're starting to see Michigan is missing Luke Yaklich as an assistant coach, who was their defensive guru. He's now in Texas as assistant for Shaka Smart. So, I mean, that's something I think is going to affect them down the line. But, I mean, these guys, they do know how to play defense. I mean, I've seen them. They can cut seams. They can switch. They can toss. They check out on shots. Do everything your defensive coaches ask them to do. But I think really there's a lot. One of my mentors has told me learning to play defense at an elite level is tough to do, and there's a price to be paid. So I would hope that it does get better for them. So, I mean, all they can do is just learn their lesson from this one and be better tomorrow.
Yep. And that's a very clear-cut and dry cliche. And it's not just cliche, it's the way it is. So
yeah. And I know that, and I was actually watching some of the game last night with a couple of friends of mine. One of them said that Michigan kind of was looking sluggish, probably from getting back from their trip to the Bahamas where they won the battle for Atlantis, and that could have had something to do with it, to a degree. But again, they just flat out didn't play well enough, and up next on their schedule, they open up Big Ten play against Iowa at home on Friday night, 6:30 tip-off on Fox Sports 1. That should be an interesting game. Iowa's a solid team. Then they got to go on the road to Illinois, which that could be tricky. Illinois is considered to be kind of that dark horse in the conference, and then they have a visit on December 14th from Oregon, who's ranked 13th in the country, and then they have a couple of games against low major teams, Presbyterian and UMass Lowell. So I think for the rest of December, I think they'll probably go 4-1 in those 5 games. I think they might lose to Oregon and maybe Illinois. I haven't decided which one, but they've got opportunities to get better. There's a lot of work to be done. It's December, and plus when Big Ten season hits, Big Ten's always a meat grinder in basketball.
Yeah, and speaking of basketball, MSU losing to who did they lose to again in that first round, the Maui Invitational?
They lost to Virginia Tech, which I was not too pleased with that. They did end up bouncing back, beating Georgia despite Anthony Edwards just going off.
And UCLA.
Yeah, they did take care of UCLA. But I mean, as for the game against Duke, I mean I'm sorry to say this as a Spartan fan, but that performance was deplorable.
Was it ever?
Yeah. The thing with Michigan State is they only have two guys who can get buckets, and that's Cassius Winston and Xavier Tillman. And that's it. I mean, Rocket Watts, look, I know he's still a freshman, he's still a puppy. He's gonna have to work on getting better. And look, Marcus Bingham, I know didn't play a ton last year. He's kind of seen more of a bigger role. Well, I mean, he's got to get better as well. Aaron Henry, I just really don't know what I can say about him. I mean, everyone will point to when Izzo chewed his ass out for not hustling on defense in the NCAA tournament, and then he responded by playing a lot better. Now, I don't know what's going on with him, if he's hurt, if he's got something going on, but he's going to have to shift his focus on playing better. I mean, play like the Aaron Henry who was against LSU in the Sweet 16 when he went off for 20 points. That's the Aaron Henry I want to see. And as for bench players, Gabe Brown, I mean, he's been okay at times. I still think he's got to get a lot better. He's got to improve his shooting as well. Hell, Malik Hall, nice player off the bench as well. Hell, again, I think he's got to develop a more consistent shot. And then please stop putting Foster Lawyer in to play meaningful minutes at point guard. And look, I hate to say this because I personally met Foster Lawyer once. Good kid, plays hard, does everything you ask him to do. But I really began to wonder if he could actually play in the Big Ten and at point guard when it's meaningful minutes. So, I mean, and I'll just say it, he's just got to be better.
Yep.
And as for the rest of Michigan State, hey, they're going to have to bounce back from this one. They've got it. Their next game is against Rutgers to open up Big Ten play. They'll win that one. Rutgers is not good. They do have to go to Oakland. I mean, I know Ed mentioned that in his notes as a possible tricky game.
Is that at the Palace? Wait, the Palace was demolished. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's going to be at Little Caesars Arena.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, it's always interesting when those two play each other, but this isn't one of Greg Campy's better teams, so they should be able to take care of business there. On the road to Northwestern, I mean, I know there's been times they've stumbled in the past there, but Northwestern, I think, since the one year they made the NCAA tournament, it's just kind of proven to be a one-hit wonder. And then they close out December with visits from Eastern Michigan and Western Michigan. So I think they'll probably end up going 5-0 through all those games before they get to January. But again, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that's got to be worked on, a lot of things they got to be better at, and they're going to have to be ready because Big Ten season, is a meat grinder that they're going to have to go through.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, it's good. Yeah, meat grinder is right. The Big Ten schedule, absolutely. 10:30, 10:39. Got 39 minutes into this, and change minutes into this thing. Got like 20 minutes left. So let's shift on over to the Lions. David Blau got the start. Jeff Driscoll was put on IR, was out for the season with a hamstring issue. David Blau got out to a great start, threw 2 touchdown passes. One of the first one being to Kenny Galladay, 75 yards, somewhere around there. Man, David Blau can, and I was thinking David Blau can throw a football. He can. This is something that we were thinking from the get-go, knee-jerk reaction, positively. This is something that we'll look forward to next year if the Lions move on from Matthew Stafford. Of course, the Bears defense made their adjustments, and David Blau's selling of greatness kind of dried up. He didn't do too bad, to be honest, but the Lions still fail to win. They lose to the Bears 24-20. Frank, Ed wrote some notes on there. What did you learn?
Well, I think he mentioned that it was a silver lining, just a brief glimmer of hope with David Blau, who I know he mentioned him lighting up Ohio when Purdue played Ohio State, not this past season, but the previous year. He lit them up for 3 bills and 3 touchdowns. And his first pass attempt, he just dropped one right in the breadbasket to Kenny Galladay for 75 yards. So, I mean, he showed that he's more agile and quicker than Driscoll and maybe even Stafford. So, I mean, I think he's kind of shown that, he's a better option for a backup QB over Driscoll or whoever else was going to be out there. I mean, he did throw a bad interception, but he's got a chance to be better as well. And truthfully, I think they do need to put Stafford on IR, protect his back, not threaten their potential high draft pick, which wherever they end up, I think they do have a chance to possibly get as high as 2. I don't think they're going to end up catching the Bengals, who are going to probably get the number 1 pick, and they'll probably end up taking Joe Burrow, quarterback at LSU, because, for one, he's the best quarterback available, and 2, side note, Joe Burrow is from Athens, Ohio, so close proximity to Cincinnati, which would likely mean the Lions could draft Chase Young out of Ohio State, and I would be perfectly fine with that. Give a pass rusher that they need the most. You put Chase Young on their defense and put him next to Snacks Harrison. Your defensive line will actually be legit. And then you look at possibly building up your offensive line and your defense through the rest of your draft picks. But we'll talk more on the draft when the time comes, especially once it gets into like February, March, and April, when all the mocks come out and you look at potential guys they could take. So with that being said, up next for the Lions is the Minnesota Vikings. I believe that will be – hang on one second. I think it's going to be I think that's on the road at US Bank Stadium.
Oh, yeah, it is, yeah. I already looked it up. It's at US Bank Stadium against the Vikings. The Lions are going to get crushed. The Vikings are 8-3.
Yeah.
No need for predictions this time.
Yeah, I'll go with you on that. I think the Vikings will win that game. And as for the Lions, the rest of their schedule. Well, they'll be at the Vikings. The Buccaneers will come in, which I think they'll probably end up with. I don't really know much about Tampa. They're just highly inconsistent. There's times they look really good, and times they look like manure, for lack of a better word. And then they go on the road to Denver. Denver is probably just as bad. And then they close the season with the Packers at Ford Field. And who knows if the Packers will even be playing their starters that game, because they'll probably already have the NFC North locked up and have nothing more to play for. So they'll just say, why risk injury to Aaron Rodgers? The only time until is just see if they can finish out the season. And I do know that Kerryon Johnson is expected to come off of IR by week 16. I saw that he was back practicing. I don't think that's really gonna do too much good. And also, a quick note that we missed when discussing University of Michigan, linebacker Josh Uche declared for the NFL draft, and he is expected to play the bowl game still. So I just wanted to make sure I threw that out there.
Also, we got quarterback Matthew Stafford having his back continuing to heal successfully, and he's aiming for a long NFL career. It doesn't have to do with this year. I know Matthew Stafford still may have a possibility of returning at about week 17 or something like that, which still means nothing. They're still going to tank anyway. But really, definitely the Lions are going to tank. But they decided to stick with Matt Patricia. He's got 3 years left in his contract, which actually I know fans are upset about it. I get it. That's the normal knee-jerk reaction. But here's the deal. It doesn't matter. Firing a coach or GM and hiring a new one of each or one of the other is not going to help, just as long as the Ford family still runs the organization, the Lions, to the ground. The only solution is for the Ford family to sell the team. That's it.
Absolutely.
And the only way to do so is that Martha Ford somehow loses control. I don't want to sound too harsh here, but once she loses control any way, shape, or form, and Bill Ford Jr. is handed to it, he most likely will sell it, just like Marion Illich and Chris Illich that Lynn Henning that tweeted out to Detroit Sports Nation. Tweeted out on his Twitter handle at Lynn_Henning. Detroit Sports Nation scoured it about 2 or 3 months ago. So yeah, this is how we see it with the Lions too. As well, Yelich still has the Red Wings in good hands as long as he has Eisman as the general manager, and the Red Wings are next. So why don't we get to the Red Wings right now? So they keep on tanking. They get routed by the Flyers 6-1, the Capitals 5-2, and the Islanders 4-1. They're off until Saturday against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Then they hit the road in Winnipeg next Tuesday. Then a week from Thursday, they're home against the Winnipeg Jets, so home and home set. So, the Red Wings are tanking. They're by far. They stand by far to get that number 1 overall pick going into the lottery next calendar year. So, but our top story before we get to our what's your grade, Ansar Khan of M Live says that that Chris Chelios says on the Spittlin' Chicklets podcast.
Spittin' Chicklets podcast. I was actually
Splittin' Chickens. Sorry.
Spittin' Chicklets.
Splittin' Chicklets podcast. Yeah. That Mike Babcock, when he was the head coach of the Red Wings, verbally assaulted Johan, quote unquote, verbally assaulted Johan Franzen by yelling at him. Words were unknown, to cause him to have a nervous breakdown when Franzen was suffering concussion-like symptoms during the first round of the 2012 Stanley Cup playoffs against the Nashville Predators. On a side note, former Red Wings assistant Bill Peters was fired for racist Well, I'll get to that later. But two Red Wing players were stating that Ken Holland was defending Babcock's statements and yelling at Franzen, and Ken Holland and Mike Babcock, they were just the terrible twosome, the dysfunctional duo, ever since they lost the cup in 2009 to the Penguins. Frank, any analysis on that?
Well, I actually do, as Holland has come out and addressed the media today in Edmonton, and he claimed that Nobody ever talked to him. But here's the thing. I think it's pretty clear that there's blood on his hands for empowering Babcock for what he did to Johan Franzen. And look, I'll admit, I was somebody who ragged on Franzen for his performances at times when he was incredibly streaky. But now, after this has been brought to light, my reaction has done a complete 180. I did not even know that this had happened. And I know I was someone who was driving the Ken Holland is a horrible GM bus. Well, now I've realized that not only was he a bad GM in Detroit, he was also a garbage human being for empowering a monster in Babcock as well. I mean, that's what Chelio said about it. Carlo Koliakovo came out and said it as well. And truthfully, with this stuff that's happening around hockey, this whole cancel culture, especially with Bill Peters, he wasn't fired in Calgary. He stepped down on his own because they legally could not fire him for something that happened 10 years ago with a completely different organization. He ended up stepping down on his own, so take that however much you want to. And then there's stuff that's come out about the Sutters as coaches, whether it be Daryl Sutter, whether it be Brent Sutter, whichever one of them was coaching. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there's going to be probably a lot more that's going to be coming out in the coming weeks and months even. Now, does this mean that Holland is going to get fired as Oilers GM? Probably not, because, again, this happened with a different organization. But what it does do is anyone who looked to Ken Holland as one of the best GMs in the NHL, I hope you all realize not only was he a bad GM in his final years for stuff that were bad trades he made, bad signings and things like that I could probably go to the Detroit Sports Rag page and go over what all the stuff Jeff Moss has highlighted. There is a part of me that wishes that if this had been exposed sooner, her and Moss would have went ham with an article, but unfortunately that's not the case. So truth be told, Holland is a bigger piece of garbage than I had originally thought. And quite frankly, there's going to be more coming out in these next few weeks and months. What that means for his future in Edmonton, only time is going to tell. But I will say, it does not look good.
No, absolutely not. Now for speaking of Jeff Moss and the DSR, the Detroit Sports Rag, we're still waiting for him to launch his new DSR podcast on Spreaker. That only time will tell when that will come, but it will come. But he, again, like I mentioned last week, like we talked about, it was going to happen this week, probably like tomorrow or Friday or Saturday, whatever time, whatever day. Better late than never, I guess, if next week. But let's go to the What's Your Grade segment before to get to the Pistons and then the closing statement. The Red Wings trade prospect defenseman Vili Sarajarvi to the Arizona Coyotes for goaltender Eric Comrie. Frank, what's your grade?
I'm giving this D+. I mean, look, I know Sarajarvi was kind of a logjam in the pipeline. I understand that. But I think this was done after I realized today that Philippe Larson had been struggling in the American Hockey League. He's been sent down to the Toledo Walleye in the ECHL. So Comrie's been brought in to basically back up Calvin Pickard in Grand Rapids. And Comrie, I know, was a pretty highly touted goaltending prospect when he was in Winnipeg, and unfortunately he did not play very well when he got the chance with the big club. Ended up getting waived, getting claimed by Arizona.
my understanding is he still wasn't cutting it there, so maybe he can get his career back on track in Grand Rapids. That's what I hope for. But only time's going to tell. And that pretty much kills the notion that I thought Philippe Larson was possibly going to see some NHL duty if Jimmy Howard ever ended up getting hurt and another injury happened to somebody like Bernier or even Calvin Pickard. So only time will tell. See if he can right the ship in his career. But I mean, it's pretty much just get goaltending depth in when you had a guy there who wasn't cutting it and you had to send him down. So, but truthfully, there's not a lot of good goaltending in Detroit right now. And maybe the best prospect in the system is probably Caden Fulcher, or who knows who else is available. I mean, I don't have their farm system page in front of me at the moment, but like I said before, Steve Yzerman's fixing stuff, and I'll admit he's not afraid to shake the tree, and this is kind of a necessary move that had to be made to get some depth in. So hopefully Eric Comrie can get things back on track.
You said a D+?
Yeah, I did, because I don't think he's going to end up getting to the NHL, and it was kind of a move made out of necessity.
Okay.
I think you probably could have. I mean, you probably could have found somebody better, because I think Comrie's goals against average was around 4 in the NHL. So I mean, here's what I'll do. I'll actually kind of. I think about it. I'll bump it up to a C with a chance to improve.
All right, that's good enough. So I'll give him a C- just to be fair, just to range it. So Pistons, they beat. Did they beat the Charlotte Hornets last Friday at Little Caesars Arena? I know they beat the Spurs 132-98.
And then they absolutely shellacked the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, the Cavaliers are awful.
The Pistons, they ended
14.
up they lost to the Hornets on Friday 110-107.
That's right.
Then they
gotcha.
go out and beat the Spurs by 34. I didn't think that was going to happen. And then they go and destroy the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are just downright awful. And then they get their rear ends handed to them by the Milwaukee Bucks tonight.
127-103.
Yeah, which that's not really any surprise there.
Yeah, the Bucks are too good. The Pistons, other than that, have played at least decent basketball, if not great. But they're considering all that, they're 8-14. They're home against the Indiana Pacers Friday at 7, at the New Orleans Pelicans next Monday at 8, and then home against the Dallas Mavericks next Thursday at 9.
Correction. That game against the Mavericks is not a home game. That I believe it's actually a neutral site. I believe it's being played in Mexico City.
Oh yeah.
Let me look. Yes, it's at
got less than 2 minutes left.
It's at Mexico City Arena. It'll be at 9:00 Eastern tip-off on December 12th. So
all right, Frank. Yep. All right, 1 minute closing statement. Go.
My closing statement is going to involve coaches, most notably coaches who have lost their jobs in the NHL. I understand that coaches have to push players to perform at their best, but there is a line you don't cross. For example, referring to a player's taste in music as a racial slur, or berating them to the point where you end up causing problems. I understand you might get in a player's face if he misses an assignment defensively.
30 seconds.
Or something, but you just have to know how far you can go and what lines you don't cross. Because at the end of the day, hey, you're trying to help them be better and be the best they can be.
but you only can go so far.
All right. My closing statement, Michigan and Michigan State are screwed by keeping Jim Harbaugh and Mark Antonio. If they keep Don Brown, if Michigan keeps Don Brown, they're even more screwed. The Lions, our only hope is for them to be sold by the Ford family. So, Frank, thank you very much. You know what to do afterwards. Take care of some private information. I'm going to have my dessert. So for Frank, on behalf of Ed, I'm Taylor. We're back next week, Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern on Zoom and Facebook Live. Thanks very much for downloading and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Bon appetit. Hit them with high, and we rest our case.